everyone, today's video is going to be another weekly meal plan. Now I know it's not been too long since my last one of these, but I'm going to try and film them somewhat regularly because you guys seem to enjoy them. I also really enjoy putting them together and hopefully they're helpful to some of you guys for some affordable meal ideas. If you've not seen any of these videos before, basically I have a budget and I have a supermarket. I have to find a week's worth of breakfast, lunch and dinners for that budget from that supermarket. So I have done a couple of these in the past, which I will leave a link to in the description. But for today's video, I have gone again with a £10 weekly budget from Tesco this time rather than Asda. So I feel like Tesco is slightly more pricey than Asda, so it was a little bit more of a challenge, but I have come up with a few different ideas to share with you guys. I feel like these videos always come with like a whole lot of disclaimers, so to kind of briefly summarize them all, these meal plans kind of assume that you have some ingredients in your house already, so kind of store cupboard ingredients like oils and seasonings and butters, etc. I don't include in these meal plans, so if you don't have them in already, that is going to be like an additional part of the budget. And I also priced up how much all of these ingredients in their like whole form would cost and how much just the parts that you're using for each meal would cost, if that makes sense. So for this weekly meal plan, everything all together comes to £12.78. but that includes extras that you won't necessarily eat that week. If you only look at the amount that's going to be used in these recipes, everything comes to £10.22, so just very slightly over that £10 budget, but I feel like I'm going to allow it. The other thing that I just like to mention is that this is based on like serving sizes, etc., which definitely don't apply to everyone, and this is going to have to be adjusted depending on how much you eat and how many people you're serving. I feel like that goes without saying, but I just like to mention it briefly because I'm suggesting, you know, this is one portion, but that's not necessarily the case. Obviously, eat as much food as you want. I just have to rely on some sort of like guideline. Otherwise, I would have nothing to go by when I do these videos. But all of the disclaimers out of the way, I'm going to start with the breakfast ideas. So for this, I've gone with like toast-based breakfasts. I feel like in my past videos, I've gone down more of like the cereal route, but you can get a loaf of brown bread in Tesco for 36p. This has, I think, 22 slices in it, roughly, so a lot of bread to last you the week. And for the toast, I picked up a jar of peanut butter for 85p, so obviously you can have peanut butter on toast. And I also got a can of baked beans for 22p, so you can have a couple of days where you have beans on toast instead. Beans on toast is like my weekend breakfast, I feel like, in this meal plan, and then peanut butter on toast during the week. Both are breakfasts that I would eat personally myself if I fancy something for breakfast. I feel like peanut butter obviously has protein, it has healthy fats. Beans as well, full of protein, so it's kind of those breakfasts that will keep you a little bit fuller. And obviously with things like toast, you can switch up the toppings as much as you want depending on what you have in your house already. So if you don't fancy peanut butter one day, you can switch that for a jam or a Marmite or chocolate spread or whatever you have in your cupboard. Moving on to the lunch ideas, the first one that I've got down is a minestrone soup. So I feel like soup by itself isn't hugely filling, but I think minestrone is like a good option because it's got beans in there, which obviously has protein, it's got the pasta, so you've got the carbohydrates. It's like more than just a soup, you're getting other elements as well. I think plain vegetable soup with no bread, nothing else, would not fill me up. I feel like the calories in that are like non-existent. So for more of like a hearty meal, a minestrone soup is a good choice. I will leave a link in the description to a minestrone soup recipe. For these ingredients, I just picked up things that I would personally throw in a minestrone soup. I don't tend to follow recipes too often personally, but I will throw a recipe down in the description. But for the soup, I picked up a can of cannellini beans for 55p. I picked up some pasta, my trusty cheap spaghetti, for 20p, a can of chopped tomatoes for 28p, some vegetable stock cubes. Now these are £1 for 12, but obviously you're not going to use all 12 stock cubes, so I put a couple of stock cubes down, which is 16p. And then Tesco also sell like a veg soup mix in the fresh food section, so that has a mix of carrot, swede, potato, onion and parsley, all kind of chopped up and ready to go, and that is 80p. And I feel like for minestrone soup that is so ideal because all of the chopping and stuff has been done for you already. Normally with vegetables and fresh food, I go for the option where it's not pre-chopped or pre-prepared because that does normally make it more expensive. But I figured for something like this, it's actually a really nice option because it means you don't have to buy a whole bag of carrots, a whole thing of onions, a whole swede, etc. It's kind of all in there already. So that is a really nice option, and you can essentially just boil everything together, make some veg stock, fry off the veg mix, add the stock, add the chopped tomatoes, add any seasonings that you have, add the cannellini beans, add the spaghetti, and then just kind of boil it all together until it's cooked. Really nice, really hearty meal, and it's especially nice while it's still so cold and gross outside. And then the second lunch idea that I had was a grilled cheese or a toasted cheese sandwich. So cheese, pesto, a little bit of spinach, some tomatoes. Such a good combination. I feel like it's a classic combination that you would get somewhere in like Starbucks. So I've got some vegan cheese on my shopping list. You can get that for £2 for 200 grams. I personally probably wouldn't use a whole block in the toasted cheese sandwiches, but it definitely depends on how cheesy you like your sandwiches, I guess. You can get a jar of vegan pesto for 90p. You can get a bag of cherry tomatoes for 48p, and then you can get a bag of spinach for £1.99. Now obviously with the pesto, the spinach and the tomatoes and the cheese, really, you're not going to be using all of those items in the sandwich unless you're making like a huge sandwich, which fair enough if you are, but I'm going to reuse some of those ingredients in one of the dinner ideas, so you don't have to buy like loads of things each week because you can reuse them for different meals. So those were the two lunch options I came up with. And then finally for dinner, and I mean I'm saying lunch and dinner, but really you could switch these around depending on what you fancied. But one of the dinner options is a pesto pasta, so obviously using up the rest of the pasta that you bought for the minestrone soup, using up the rest of the pesto from the toasted sandwich, grilling some tomatoes for the side is so good with pesto pasta. You can serve it with a big thing of spinach, so you can get some greens in, and you can top it with some vegan cheese as well. Such a good dinner, one of my staples. I feel like pesto pasta is up there with like the elite pasta combinations. So, I mean, I can't imagine you've not tried it. If you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend it. And the fact that Tesco sell vegan pesto for as little as 90p is really good to me. I feel like pesto that was vegan back in the day was like £2.50 and there were no cheaper options, but Tesco's own brand happens to be 90p, which is really affordable in my opinion. And then for the final dinner idea, I've got a vegetable stir fry. So for this you can get a huge bag of stir fry veg for £1.75. Again, this is like veg that has been prepared for you, so it can be a little bit more expensive. But when it's like a big combination of different bits and bobs that you would not want to buy individually, I feel like it works out cheaper. So this has a whole bunch of different veggies in there that you can stir fry up. You can get some noodles for 90p, and you get 6 kind of portions in there, so you won't be using that all in 1 week. And then you can also get a couple of stir fry sauces for 50p each, so they normally serve 2, and I've put kind of 4 portions of stir fry on this weekly meal plan, so picked up a couple of the different stir fry sauces for those. I did also think as well you could add some peanut butter to your stir fry from the toast. I personally love peanut flavoured sauces. I will say stir fry is like not my favourite meal out there, but if I'm going to have any sort of stir fry sauce, it's going to be like a peanut based one. I really like a peanut lime kind of sauce with noodles, or like a dressing that's peanut flavoured. So good. So I feel like you could definitely jazz it up a little bit with the peanut butter as well. And obviously you can pick different flavours of stir fry sauces, so depending on what you fancy you can switch it up. You can obviously very easily also make your own stir fry sauce with things like soy sauce, a little bit of sesame oil, maybe some sweet chilli or some sort of chilli sauce. But I didn't think everyone would necessarily have those ingredients in their cupboard, so a stir fry sauce can be a really good option, especially if it's not something that you have on a super regular basis, so you don't need to have kind of all of the sauce ingredients in your cupboard at all times. And that is the final meal idea on this weekly meal plan. So like I mentioned at the start of this video, everything, including the additional bits and bobs, comes to £12.78, and if you just look at the ingredients used for these meals specifically, it comes to £10.22, so really affordable when you think about it for a whole week's worth of breakfast, lunch and dinners. Now again, I mentioned this in all my other videos, but if you've got other things in your cupboard or your fridge or your freezer, you can definitely switch this up. I feel like when it comes to eating cheap, having the same sorts of meals over and over again do work out cheaper, because you can obviously make a bigger portion of them and you only have to buy kind of a few sets of ingredients, which is why I only have kind of 6 different meals, I guess, in this whole weekly meal plan that you can switch up and alternate each day. If you say made a chili one week and you've got a few portions left over of that in the freezer, You can kind of switch it up depending on what you fancy. It's definitely not set in stone, but it does give kind of a nice base level idea of different meals for that week. So I hope you guys have found this video helpful. Definitely let me know any other supermarkets you want me to take a look at, and I can definitely do that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.